In order to write code in Python, you need to have Python installed in your computer and somewhere to write the code. You could write code in a plain text editor like Notepad, for example, but developers will usually work with an IDE, which is a text editor with a lot of extra functionality, such as detection of errors, color code, and integration with more advanced services, which we'll go over later on in this series. So first thing, let's check if Python is already installed in your computer. To do that, click the Start button on the left bottom corner, and you can just type CMD for command prompt. This window is basically your direct communication with your computer. So to check if you have Python installed, just type in the command python space dash dash version. Because I already have Python installed, it is displaying the version of Python I have here. If you don't have Python yet, a red message saying that this command is not recognized will show. So in order to download Python, just visit the python.org website. I left the link in the description of the video. Go over to downloads and click download here. So after the download is finished, before you click here on the installer, if you're using Windows, be careful because you'll need to select one option before the end of the installation process. If you're using Mac, you can just click and accept everything. But if you're using Windows, make sure to click the option that asks if you want to add Python to path, because that'll give you some problems if you don't. So after Python has finished installing, just go back to the command prompt, type in the same command, and check if now Python is showing with the latest version. If you have downloaded Python, you have installed it, but it's still showing the message that Python is not recognized, then that's because Python is not yet added to your path in your environment variables. I'll leave a couple of links in the description to show you how you can add Python to the environment variables and correct this issue. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is just download and install Visual Studio Code. I can simply type VS Code here on Google, go over to the first link and download for Windows. It should detect your system and it would suggest to make a download for a Mac if that's what you use. You should be able to install VS Code in older machines as well. The requirements are fairly low. It asks for 1 gig of RAM, and it is essentially a text editor with a lot of extra functionality. So it shouldn't be that heavy on your computer, even if you have a machine that's a little older. So let's just click here on the installer, accept. Now I'll change my folder because my J drive is where I'm saving everything. Next. So I'll actually create a desktop icon and I'll also select these options, add to path. Yep, register code as an editor for supported files. That's fine. And install. Now that it's finished, we can launch Visual Studio Code. So this is the welcome page on Visual Studio Code. You're probably going to have some tips and tricks here. I have recent files that I had opened because I deleted Visual Studio Code simply to show you how to install it. So the first thing we want to do is create a new folder for our projects. I already created this folder. Python for Beginners is the name of the series. I'm gonna put all the code that I write here, and you should to get started just create a blank folder to put everything that you write in. Perfect. So first, you can see here that the name of the folder is already here. VS Code is going to treat this as our workspace, which is very beneficial to us. So let's just click here, create a file, name it hello.py, And you can see that right after we put py as the extension file, as the file type, this Python symbol showed up here because VS Code is very intelligent and it can detect the file type. On your software, you probably received an extension download pop-up here asking if you'd like to download the Python extension for VS Code, which you should accept. Make sure that the Python extension is downloaded into your VS Code, because that will help you a lot and will prevent a lot of errors. So just to give you a quick introduction, it's the last thing I'm going to do. I'm not going to type any code here today, but I just wanted to show you the parts of VS Code so you get a little bit familiar with it. You can see here there's a sidebar, which is the Explorer. It's kind of like it's going to show you all the files and folders that you have here in your project. You can search for words and files here, the second icon. This third icon here is for source control. So if you're creating a project with somebody, kind of like a school project, and you do your part first, let's say, and then you send it over to them, and they'll contribute with some information, and then last thing you want to do is a third student conclude the project. This sort of source control helps with that. You can see the first version created by you. You can go over to the second version created by your friend, and so on. This is the purpose of source control. VS Code has already debugging tools, which will be very handy for your projects. Don't worry too much about it in the beginning. Our projects are going to be very simple, but debugging is a big part of being a programmer, and it helps you visualize how your software is within the runtime, within the execution of it. Here on this icon, you can see extensions. They're pretty much like a web browser extension. They just add extra functionality to this application. So it could help you run databases or have some stuff installed here. If you're anything like me, when I first downloaded VS Code, I was super excited and really wanted to learn things fast, and I ended up downloading a bunch of stuff that I didn't have to. So I would advise you to be very cautious and not download anything that you really don't need right now. Essentially, don't download anything until you know better and until you're instructed directly to do so. I know that I downloaded a bunch of stuff that I didn't need, so it kind of complicated my life down the road. This you're probably not going to have. I got this from one of my extensions. Git Lens is a new feature. It's still, I think it's not in beta anymore, but don't worry about it. Last thing I want to show you is remember the command prompt. We checked the Python version here. You can access the command prompt clicking here, terminal. So this is a benefit. Many times you're going to run a program here. This is the text editor portion, and then you're going to see the response to your project right here. So you're not going to have to go back and forth to the command prompt whenever you want to see what was printed, what happened to your application. You can already see response down here. So another feature that you're going to have available to you is this small map here to the right side. You can see it's all in yellow and red because it's assuming that my code is full of errors. I just wrote some gibberish here so you could see this, because if the page was all blank, there would be no map. And you can also click here and it will take you to the portion of the code that you want. This is beneficial. You can see here my code has 150 lines, 156. But imagine code for a big corporation. It could end up having millions of lines. Essentially, it's beneficial to share that within different files, have a bunch of different files, but sometimes it's inevitable, or it might even be best practice to just leave things that are similar in the same files. So this would help you navigate all that.